did you see Elvis perform in public for the first time?
The first time I saw Elvis, other than high school, was at the behind the Lamar Airways Shopping Center, behind the Cat's Drug Store. Are you aware of that story?
I've heard that. I've heard a little bit about that. Yeah.
What happened was, they built a shopping center called the Lamar Airways Shopping Center, right at Lamar and Airways.
Yeah.
Okay. It was the first big shopping center in Memphis, and they had entertainment each evening behind the theater, behind the drugstores. Katz, it's spelled K-A-T-Z. It was a big national chain of drugstores.
I don't think they exist anymore.
No, I don't think so. Yeah. And they hired me to do the music during. I was like a disc jockey on location, but not on the radio, but just on location, like a remote type thing.
Yeah.
And I was there. The ad agency hired me to play records and make announcements, like, ladies and gentlemen, at the such and such store, they're opening, they welcome you, they have a sale going on, a special, this and that. Well, they told me, they said, GK, Saturday night, your buddy Elvis is coming out. I said, Elvis is coming out? They said, yeah, he's going to perform. And what they did, they had a flatbed truck. Back in those days, a lot of people would use a flatbed truck as a portable stage. It was a neat thing. They just drive the flatbed truck up, disconnect it from the front of the truck, and you got a stage there. And put some stools or something, just jumped up there. And so I brought Elvis on, and when Elvis arrived, he was really happy to see me. Hey, GK, how you doing? But it was just Elvis, Scotty, and Bill. DJ hadn't joined the group at that time,
right?
The drummer. And so I introduced Elvis, and that was the first time I saw him, and it was packed that night. There must have been 1,000 people out there to watch him.
Oh, really? That many?
Because see, he'd already done. I think he'd already done the Overton Park thing, Shell.
Yeah.
And so the word was spreading really fast.
He was already on the radio by then.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And the show was free. There was no charge, so they charged to get in the Overton Park show, but this show was free. So that was the first time I ever saw him.
Huh.
But I'd seen him in high school many times.
Sure.
8th grade, 10th grade, talent show. Homeroom party or something like that, and then the talent show in the 12th grade. So I'd seen Elvis perform probably 4 or 5 times before I saw him as a professional,
Yeah, yeah. Was it different seeing him as a professional?
It was, yeah, it was. It was different because here he was on stage. It was kind of organized. He had 2 more musicians with him. When I saw him in high school, he was by himself playing the guitar. But here he had a bass player and a drummer. A bass player and a guitar player, and they were pretty good.
Yeah.
They were all the professionals themselves, and he just fell right in with them, and I was really proud of him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was meant to be that way.
Yeah. You been down to the Variety Club?
No.
Okay, the Variety Club has changed. It's not where it was anymore.
No.
The Variety Club used to be in the basement of the old Gales Hotel, Goldsmiths area.
Yeah.
And when Dewey would get off the air, Elvis and I'd be up there hanging with him because we were up almost every night. And we'd go to the Variety Club because Memphis didn't have mixed drinks. It was the only club that was open all night long, till 2 in the morning. So when Dewey would get off there, he was a member. And the Variety Club was real close to the Chisk Hotel where our studios were at WHBQ. So we'd go to the Variety Club, be Elvis, me, and Dewey. And we'd go down there, and once in a while there'd be a couple of guys in there, but not much because midnight people during the week, they'd already gone home. But the bartender, his name was Slate, S-L-A-T, and I think he's still there. But they moved to the Variety Club. Now, he could tell you some stories. But anyway, the story that I'm leading up to is Elvis has just signed with RCA Records. And we're at the Variety Club. And it's just me, Dewey, and Elvis, and the bartender. And Elvis says, GK, you and Dewey, come over. There was a piano there on the stage. That little stage where on the weekends they had a little 3-piece band. And he said, I'm going to play y'all my new record, a new song I'm going to cut next week in Nashville for RCA. I said, yeah, Elvis, we'd like to hear that. And Elvis played piano by ear. That was his second instrument. I don't know if you knew that or not. But he could play piano. Yeah. So he sat down and he played Heartbreak Hotel. I looked at Dewey, and Dewey looked at me, and we said, Elvis, that's a great song. That's a smash hit, man. Where'd you get that? And he said, a school teacher in Florida wrote this. It was Mae Axton. Her son was Hoyt Axton, the actor-singer.
Yeah.
And she had done some fronting for shows for Colonel Parker. She had moonlighted by fronting, and she knew Colonel Parker, and she knew Elvis, so she got him the song. She was co-writer. We said, Elvis, that's a great song, man. And of course, he went to Nashville and cut it and went straight to #1.
That's it. That was it.
Getting back to Ottoman Drive, we play games. You've heard this at Ottoman Drive. He played Name That Song. Or Elvis would sit down at the piano at Ottoman Drive, whether it was Barbara Hearn or whatever young lady he was with. And then there'd be a few other people around. And he would play instrumentally, name a song. We'd have to name it. We'd do that all night long. And I wasn't very good at it, but and then he would sing maybe a few of the lyrics, you know.
But he knew hundreds and hundreds.
He knew a lot of songs.
He knew a lot of songs.
Amazing. He had that photographic memory.
Yeah.
And he could really recall words of songs easily.
Understand he knew almost every gospel song ever written, or somebody said that.
Yeah, he was great on gospel music.
Yeah. Yeah.
But those are some of the things that happened on Ottoman Drive. And
yeah.
I remember Uncle Vester and Uncle Travis would come over and visit with Elvis's mom, and they have simple food, simple dinners, and
yeah.
A lot of parties, and a lot of old friends would drop by to see Elvis over there, and we'd be there and we'd party all night long. And a lot of good memories from Ottoman Drive, but Ottoman Drive couldn't hold a candle, obviously, because Graceland was so big. And we were blown away with Graceland because, we'd never been in a house like that.
No, it had more space, more land around it. My understanding is that Audubon Drive, that the neighbors just were beside themselves.
Yeah,
they'd had enough of all the fans and all that.
It was created quite
all the attention over there.
Kids coming from all over the world flying in and wanting to see Elvis and hanging around the gate, just to get a glimpse of him and get an autograph or a picture.
It's funny, I talked to some of these neighbors, and my impression was the moms and dads hated it and the kids loved it.
Oh, yeah.
Because Elvis was like a circus every day. They never knew what was coming next. It was
I think I've told you, Mike, one of Elvis's neighbors, he was 12 years old at the time, was Fred Smith, who became the CEO of Federal Express. The guy founded Federal Express, and he came up with the idea for FedEx.
Yeah.
And he told me he lived 2 or 3 doors down. He used to come swim in Elvis's pool. Now, you may correct me if I'm wrong. I think at that time, Elvis had the only pool on the block.
He may have. He was considered to be the largest swimming pool in the city at the time.
Okay.
His privately owned pool in his backyard. It was huge.
Yeah.
I can tell you that.
And Fred Smith told me, the CEO of FedEx, that he used to come and swim in Elvis's pool. He said George, there was a back way by the Butler Mansion.
Oh yeah, I know the Butler Mansion.
And he said we would come through there, and Elvis wouldn't. He said, "Yeah, come on, guys, go ahead," because they were 12 years old. Elvis at that time was when he got
21.
21 when he got to Ottoman Drive. Okay, and Fred and those guys were about 12 or 13. And then Fred said he would come over and play with Elvis's dog. He said Elvis let him play with his dog. He always had a cool dog, he thought.
Yeah.
But I don't know anybody else who lived on Audubon Drive who became famous other than Elvis and Fred Smith.
Wealthy people, but not famous. I don't know.
Kyle Rote lives over there now, and his father was an All-American football star somewhere in Texas at SMU or somewhere.
Yeah.
And then he became America's first soccer star.
Yeah.
But he lives on Audubon Drive. Kyle Rote Jr.
Well, one of the places Elvis liked to go was the old fairgrounds amusement park, or in later years, Liberty Land.
Yeah, well, Elvis used to rent the fairgrounds a lot before it became Liberty Land. It was what they call an iron park, meaning that the iron rides, and they didn't have the booths and like theme parks do. And we'd rent that, and then it became Liberty Land, which is a small theme park, a very small Six Flags, if you will, type park.
Yeah.
And I was a consultant for them, and Elvis called me and said, GK, I want to go out there, and we're going to have a big thing for Lisa, and I want to rent the park. So I set that up, and he came out and stayed all night, rented the park, and I think that was the last time he rented that park.
When was that?
He died in '77, so it had to be in the spring of '77 somewhere, middle of summer '77. Yeah. Well, wait, he died in August, so it said to be June or July, somewhere in there.
Okay. Yeah.
But it was a lot of fun. He loved to ride the Pippin, obviously, and the bumper cars. And a lot of stories about the Pippin and the bumper cars, and where he would get out of the Pippin up there and he would come down the track.
He would get off the track?
Yeah, he would get off. The Pippin I never would ride it because I would get sick, but you ride the rides. Well, when the Pippin would get to the top, it would stall for just a second.
Yeah.
Not long enough to get, and Elvis would get out. The car would come down, Elvis would be gone. He didn't know where he was, but he was standing up there until he came back around.
Did it scare everybody to death?
Yeah, well, at first it did. They knew he had to be up there somewhere.
Yeah, right. Well, I think he was very lucky he didn't fall off, but that's just me.
Colonel Parker would have had a heart attack.
He would have. He would have had a heart attack. What about those bumper cars? I
The
seem to
bumper
recall
cars,
that.
well, you've seen them a lot in parks where you bump against each other and they got bumpers on
Yeah.
them. He'd ride those things till every one of them would quit running. They'd ride them all night long, and they'd have a lot of fun, those bumper cars. But that was a lot of fun. I'd ride the bumper cars occasionally because they didn't make me sick. But the bumper cars and the Pippin were his two favorite rides at Liberty Land or the fairgrounds, whatever it used to be. And we would rent those occasionally. Also, we'd rent the whole entire Mid-South Fair, that big fair that comes through every fall.
Yeah, it's coming through
yeah.
this next week.
Yeah, well,
next month.
he would send me or one of the other guys out, and he would send usually me because I knew the people there. And I said, look, Elvis wants to rent this entire fair when it shuts down tonight. They said, okay, because they knew that I was connected to Elvis. And we'd go out there about midnight, and we'd ride all the rides, and we'd throw all the balls at milk bottles, and we'd throw the darts, and we'd win all the teddy bears, and Elvis would throw them to the girls. Because what would happen, people would hear that we were going to be there.
Oh, yeah.
And so the people that worked there, they'd bring their girlfriends or their wives, and they'd follow us around to different locations where we going through the fair. And every time we'd win a teddy bear, Elvis would throw it to the crowd, you know.
Yeah, it was hard to keep anything Elvis did a secret.
Yeah.
Now, Elvis loved gospel music. I understand you used to go to...
Yeah,
one or
Elvis
two of
loved
the-
gospel music. Assembly of God was his church. That's where the Blackwood Brothers went.
Right.
In fact, Dixie Locke, the young girl that he dated, who he took to her prom, she still works there to this day. A lovely lady, very classy lady. And but when we would go to First Assembly of God, the only time I remember was I think it was Easter or something like that. Elvis had to leave because it caused quite a commotion.
Yeah,
Sat upstairs and people wanted his autograph or shake hands, and
that was disruptive.
it was disruptive, so we had to leave.
Yeah. What? But he liked black gospel music too.
Oh, I like spirituals a whole lot. Yeah. He loved both white gospel and black spirituals a whole lot. And like we said earlier, he almost knew every word to every gospel song there was anyway.
I think the best known church for gospel, correct me if I'm wrong, was East Trigg Baptist, is it?
Yeah, East Trigg Baptist was not too far from Graceland. And Reverend Brewster was a preacher. And Reverend Brewster lived in my old neighborhood, kind of sort of near my grammar school. And he was quite a guy because he'd written a lot of spiritual hit records. And East Trigg became an in thing because as rock and roll was coming in, the kids were looking for something to do, especially on Sunday night when everything is dead. And the word got around, if you go to East Trigg Baptist Church about 10 o'clock or 9 o'clock on Sunday night, 8 o'clock, whatever, for the last service, they've got a band in there. They got a great band, and we'd say, a band? They said, yeah, they have guitar player and drummer and sax and bass player, but they'd be doing spiritual music. And the unusual thing about that was, in that day, the black people sat down front by themselves, and they had a roped off section for white people, which became reversed, you know.
White people sat in the back.
Yeah, the white people, we sat in the back. But man, we got into it. And then I was, like I said earlier, I was part-time at WHBQ. Well, it just so happened that WHBQ would broadcast their Sunday night services on WHBQ. Oh. And I'd go over with Bob Lewis, who was one of the producers, and help him set it up. And Elvis would be there, and we'd all be there. We all knew each other. And it was a hangout place on Sunday nights.
Oh, my
cool
goodness.
place, yeah. Because the music was really good, man.
Yeah, bet it was. Well, George, as you know, Elvis came back to Memphis to record in 1969. He hadn't done anything recording in Memphis in many years, and he picked a studio that was becoming famous at the time. It was called American Sound Studio.
No longer there yet.
No, it doesn't exist any longer, but it was
Yeah.
coming into its own at that time. Can you tell me a little more about that?
Yes, because I was highly involved in that. I was hanging out over there a whole lot. It was only about a mile from Humes High School. It was at Thomas and Chelsea, and North Memphis. And my friend Chip Smolman was the owner. And he was becoming a very famous producer. He cut Neil Diamond there, Dionne Warwick, the Righteous Brothers, Wilson Pickett, Joe Tex, Sandy Posey, cut all these great hits, Pat Clark, Brenda Lee, Dusty Springfield recorded there, Preacher Man. And he was becoming red hot. It was the hottest studio in the South. Well, I'd been mentioning this to Elvis, and some of the other guys had too because they knew Chips. But I went out on the limb one night and really got on my high horse and suggested Elvis that he ought to record there. And I did it in a nice way. And Elvis said, okay, so he told Felton Jarvis to set it up, his producer. And we set it up, and Elvis went over there, And man, as they say, the rest is history. Suspicious Minds, Kentucky Rain, Don't Cry Daddy in the Ghetto, all these great songs came out of there.
Yeah, he got some good songs for the
Yeah.
sessions. He really did.
It was a marvelous session. Probably RCA told me once that the people at RCA, the executives, they thought it was the best all-around songs that Elvis had ever done. By that they meant song-wise, writing, production, performance, musicianship, production, everything.
Yeah.
They thought it was really, because if you listen to those sessions, those 33 songs he cut over there, today they sound fresh even today.
Yeah. Yeah, they do.
Because Chip Smallman was a great producer.
Now, were those, Suspicious Minds, Kentucky Rain, were those the last #1 songs Elvis did in his lifetime?
You know, I'm not sure, because I know Suspicious Minds were #1. Kentucky Rain was out on an album. I know In the Ghetto, I think, was #1.
#1, yeah.
I don't know after that, because after that something happened and he went over to Stax and he cut an album at Stax, which was pretty good, but not quite as good as the American sessions. And then he started recording at Graceland, and you know, he cut Moody Blue and he cut Hurt at Graceland.
Yeah.
So there may have been a couple more #1 songs in there, and I'm not very good on remembering dates and stuff like that.
Okay.
So I'm not sure.
Yeah, but there was clearly some of his best work was the American sound.
The American was tremendous. Even the songs that weren't big hits were still great songs. If you listen to them today, if they came out today, they'd be a hit.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, oh, you know what? He did have, well, he passed away, but Little Less Conversation went #1 on the remix.
Ah, right.
But of course, he'd already passed away. He'd been dead for 28 years when that came out. But, which is an amazing feat for a performer to have a hit record after he's been dead 28 years, you know.
That's because the music's still fresh.
Exactly. Elvis's legacy. Elvis's legacy was his music. Sure, he was a movie star, great on stage, did television, but his legacy was his music because it stands the test of time. It's still with us today.
Yeah, the best of it will outlive us.
Yeah. Yeah, the ranch was okay. You're talking about Horn Lake Ranch?
Circle G.
You know why it's called the Circle G?
No.
Why do you think?
Oh, I see. Graceland.
No.
No? Gladys?
Yeah, Gladys. It was named after his mother, Gladys. Alan Fortis, who I got a job with Elvis. We were down there. Elvis was looking for a place to ride his horses, is what it was. Graceland was becoming too small to ride those horses. Everybody had horses, so one day he was driving around and he saw this ranch for sale, a small ranch, 150 acres. So he told Alan Fortis to go buy it. Alan went and bought it, like that day. And that night we were there. It was a really quick movement, but we were sitting around and Alan said, Elvis, you ought to call it the Circle G. Because at that time, everything was a circle, the Circle Y, the Circle T. It was cool in ranch lingo to name something the Circle. And he said, Elvis, call it the Circle G after your mom, Gladys. And Elvis said, yeah, that's a good idea. So they put that logo on trucks and stuff. And we stayed down there, a couple of years. That was only had that ranch, wasn't he?
Yeah. Priscilla talks about it quite a bit.
Yeah, well, Elvis became bored with it and told his daddy to sell it. And he sold it. But it was a good getaway. Elvis was always looking for something new. It was a little getaway place for the weekend, you know.
Yeah.
And a place to ride the horses. And we had some picnics down there. And everybody had a house trailer. And Elvis was going to build everybody a house down there. He gave everybody a piece of the property. And then he became infatuated with it and just told his dad to sell it, you know.
Yeah. He was kind of impulsive. He got into something really big.
Exactly.
And then,
that's right.
Then he was bored with it.
Yeah,
and
that's right.
Let it go. So.
The thing about Elvis and Bill Street is over-exaggerated. He never hung out at those clubs down there. He never went to. It wasn't cool. It wasn't. They didn't bother you, but it just wasn't cool for a white guy to go to a black club on Bill Street back in those days. Everything was cool in those days. Nobody bothered you, but it just wasn't hip to do that. And a lot of stories became embellished and exaggerated about Elvis hanging out at clubs on Bill Street. It's not true. The only place Elvis hung out on Bill Street was Lansky Brothers Men's Shop and Home of the Blues Record Shop. He'd buy some records there. And those were the two places. But Club Handy, which was upstairs, Third and Beale or whatever it was.
Fernando and Beale, yeah.
Fernando and Beale. Yeah. And I'd go down there. The reason I'd go down there because Dewey Phillips could get in. Dewey was a hot jock, and the blacks loved Dewey because he was playing their music at night because WDI signed off at sundown. So Dewey could go down there, and I'd go down there with Dewey. But it wasn't a comfortable. It wasn't dangerous at all. They didn't bother you, but you just felt a little uncomfortable, you know.
It wasn't your world.
No.
It was their world.
Yeah, but Elvis never hung out down there. I don't know how that story got started.
Yeah. There's a lot of legends about Elvis.
Yeah. And a lot of them are exaggerated and embellished upon, like I said. But they don't hurt anything. They make good copy, make good TV shows.
Sure they
makes
do.
good stories, you know.
Yeah, that's true.
When they're not hurting anybody, so I don't have any problem with it.
But you know, he did pick up some of his style from Beale Street. You know, Lansky's clothing and things like that.
Oh yeah, Lansky's clothing was very influential. Have you been down to Lansky's in the Peabody and talked to Bernard or anything?
Oh, we're going to do that. Yeah, we're going to talk to Bernard.
He's a character, man.
Oh yes.
He's a character.
He still sells.
Yeah, boy, he's a salesman. He's a great guy. I love him. Got really hip-looking clothes even today.
Yeah.
But I was thinking about downtown locations. The Low State Theater. Elvis worked as an usher there.
Yes.
And you've heard that story.
Yeah.
The girl behind the candy counter was slipping Elvis candy or popcorn, and Elvis was kind of flirting with her, and he got in a fight with another usher, and the manager, which was Arthur Grooms, fired both of them.
Right.
Okay, now here's the part to that story which you've never heard. He fired both of them. Then when Elvis became famous, we were hanging out with Dewey there again. We go down to the Variety Club, and who's there but Arthur Grooms, the guy who fired Elvis. And Elvis laughed about it. They just laughed and slapped hands, and it made a joke about it. But Elvis's first movie, I think, was world premiered at that theater where he got fired.
Love Me Tender. Yeah.
And that was where you'll read about it in my book. I got a book coming out called Elvis, My Best Man. And I just have a book that just came out called Elvis, the Family Album, edited by George Klein. And this will be on sale sometime this Christmas in the stores around the country.
That's beautiful looking book.
It really is a nice coffee table book. And but my real book about Elvis, called Elvis, My Best Man, because he was the best man at my wedding, is going to come out this time next year. And I will get into great detail about what happened on the firing and Arthur Groom and all of that. But the Reader's Digest version is Mr. Groom fired him, later laughed about it because Elvis, the movie, was debuted there, and the fact that Elvis had been an usher at that theater. In fact, Paul Harvey called me once and asked me about that. He told that story in the show once.
Oh, he did?
Yeah. And but that was, the Low State was a beautiful theater. It was gorgeous. You walked up these steps and it looked like something out of Hollywood. There was two Lowe's theaters in downtown Memphis. There was Lowe's State on Main and Lowe's Palace on Union, right around the corner. That was when all the major theaters were downtown Memphis.
Yeah, I never saw them.
Which later became the Orpheum.
Yeah.
And then there was the Strand, the Warner Brothers on the other end of Main Street, and the Princess, which was a real cheap theater, but they ran second-run movies, and they made a lot of fun about the Princess, but the Princess went away. But Main Street back in those days was a wonderful place to go and hang out. It was on Saturday, you know, everybody would go down there. And
it was kind of like shopping mall for the kids today.
Yeah,
you know, Main Street had all the stores, all the activity.
Right. Yeah.
People would cruise up and down it.
That's true.
Yeah.
Elvis and I used to drag Main. I'd be with Elvis. You know what dragging Main means? It's called cruising.
Cruising.
You get in your car and you look for girls. You go up and down the street, and Elvis and I would do that. And man, can you imagine dragging Main with Elvis Presley?
Probably didn't have any trouble attracting attention.
No, we didn't. There's a restaurant in Memphis called Coletta's. Actually, there's two. There's one still there, the original location on East Parkway, not far from Graceland. The other one is now out in north of Memphis. It's in a place called Bartlett area, and that's where I still go. Well, I've been telling Elvis, all of Elvis's guys, we grew up on Coletta's Italian food. They had great Italian food, and we all grew up there. We'd all go there after ball games or after movies and or after water skiing and eat. And I kept telling Elvis how great food they had. Well, Priscilla had been ordering food from there. She'd sent some of Elvis's guys down there to get it to go and bring it up to Graceland. And so it was like, it was either an Easter or either it was a Mother's Day or something. And I said, Elvis, why don't we go to Coletta's? Because after everybody left Graceland, it was just me and Elvis and Priscilla and my lady and one or two of the Memphis Mafia guys. He said, okay, let's go. You've been telling me about this dadgum place. We're going to go. So I called Jerry Coletta, the owner, and they got a private room there. And when I told him we were coming, so we come in, we go in that private room. The waitress comes up, and she took everybody's order when she got around Elvis, and everything. And Elvis said, okay, I don't want this. She said, I'm sorry, Mr. Presley, we're out of that. He said, okay, I'll take this then. She said, I'm sorry, Mr. Presley, we're out of that. He said, what? She said, Mr. Presley, it's like Mother's Day, and we've had a lot of business today, and we're almost sold out of everything. So Elvis took a roll and he threw it at me. He said, you son of a gun, you told me to come here, they don't have anything I want. But yeah, I think he ordered a pizza or something, so he was just kidding around. But from that became because Elvis went there, but it was already a hot restaurant, but he became even hotter. And I think they have a couple of pictures of me and Elvis up on the wall over there somewhere. And the guy, Jerry Coletta, he and his father Horace ran that restaurant. And till to this day, I still eat Coletta's Italian food.
George, how do you think Elvis stayed a nice guy?
Oh, okay.
Compared to other celebrities.
Okay, that's easy. I would ask Elvis and some of the other, Elvis, you're such a nice guy. You're nice to everybody. And Elvis, it's hard to be nice to everybody. And he would say, you know, guys, he said, when I was coming up, when I was a teenager, and I'd go to these gospel shows, other shows, and I'd meet people, I'd remember who was nice to me and who wasn't. And he said, if I ever made it, I'm going to be nice to everybody. And man, he was nice to everybody. That was just him. He'd sign autographs. I never saw Elvis Presley refuse to sign an autograph. I never saw Elvis Presley refuse to shake hands with people. I never saw Elvis Presley refuse to take a picture if he had time and you had a camera. That's why you see a lot of pictures of Elvis and fans today in magazines and books and things.
Hundreds of them.
Because he would take pictures with everybody. Now, a lot of your stars, Paul Newman comes to mind, and there are others that won't do that. But Elvis was Mr. Nice Guy when it came to talking to his fans. We would say, Elvis, there's about 50 or 60 people down at the gate tonight. And it'd be cold, it'd be wintertime. He'd go down to his front gate at Graceland, and he would stand there for an hour or two, signing autographs and shaking hands and taking pictures. He was just unbelievably nice to everybody. And his line was, he would tell everybody who worked for him, be nice to my fans because they made it possible for me to be a star.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess a lot of people lose sight of that when they become famous. They forget what it's like to be unknown.
He was. I'm not just saying he was nice to everybody. He would go out of his way to be nice to people. He was just unbelievable in that aspect. It was good though. It was good for him to do that because that's why the legacy lives on. Is because the fact that the people who are older now, the middle-aged people and the older people, they remember how nice he was and nice to his family, nice to his mom and his daddy and his friends. He was so generous. You know, he gave away over 200 Cadillacs and gave free trips, paid for 2 of my operations, would let me pay for them. He sent me to Hawaii once, all expenses paid. You know, he gave me 2 Cadillacs, gave me this ring I'm wearing today as a birthday gift. It was his ring and he gave it to me. He was generous to a fault. And I would ask him about it. He said, GK, he said, what is fame and fortune if you can't share it with your friends?
He was generous to a lot of people.
Oh, yeah. Almost everybody in America who is my age or in my age bracket remembers where they were and what they were doing when Elvis passed away. They remember when they were when John F. Kennedy passed away. They remember where they were when Elvis passed away. And I was consulting at Libertyland as the theme park. I was over that day doing my consultant thing. And I get a call from the radio station. And they said, oh, George, from a very reliable source, we understand Elvis has passed away. And I said, I don't believe it. You know, we've heard those rumors before. They said, could you please check it out? And so I called Graceland, and they said, yes, George, it's true, and you need to get out here as fast as you can. I jumped in my car and drove about 100 miles an hour to get to Graceland. It was very chaotic when I got there. Everybody was crying and holding their heads and shaking and hugging each other. It was just unbelievably sad. I'll never forget that scene the rest of my life. But that's where I was when I first heard the news. It was in the afternoon, as I recall.
Yeah.
Elvis changed the world. He changed the whole 20th century with music and movies and the way we acted and the way we talked, and clothes we wore and the music that we loved. And he was a guy. He was the innovator. He was the original rock star. He was the pioneer. He blazed the trail for the rest of them. Like one time I happened to mention to the Everly Brothers that Elvis opened the door, and they said, no, Elvis didn't open the door. He kicked it down and we walked through. And that was just it. James Brown told me that, he said, George, James Brown was good. I introduced Elvis to James Brown, and he said, George, he said, He said, until Elvis came along, our black music was subdued. We could only get played on black radio stations. But when Elvis came along and started recording some of our music, then it opened the door for us on white stations. He said, Elvis helped us immensely.
Yeah.
And he did that for everybody, and he just changed everything when he came along.
Next we're going to the Eagle's Nest, one of the honky-tonks where Elvis performed back in the early days. That was a great conversation with George. You know, when you think about Elvis's career, it's all adulation, girls screaming, big success. But the truth is sometimes he wasn't really the star of the show, or things didn't go quite so well. We're here in southeast Memphis, busy corner, Lamar and Winchester, and this building to my left used to be the Eagle's Nest nightclub. And the Eagle's Nest then was at the edge of the city, really out in the country. And it was a honky-tonk, what we call them, a hillbilly nightclub, country and western music. And here the patrons were more attuned to Hank Williams Sr., Ernest Tubb, Hank Thompson, Hank Snow. You get the picture. Traditional country music. Now, when Elvis teamed up with Scotty Moore and Bill Black, Elvis really didn't have a lot of nightclub experience or any experience performing in front of an audience. But Scotty and Bill did. They were part-time musicians, and they worked in country western bands, hillbilly bands. So it was really Scotty who took the initiative to book the three of them into the Eagle's Nest, and so they did in the summer of 1954. It was Scotty Moore, Bill Black, and Elvis wearing his unusual pink and black Beale Street clothing in this country and western nightclub. And to say that they screamed and yelled for him would be an exaggeration. No, they really didn't. They just kind of looked at him funny. Because there was alcohol served in these clubs, you really didn't have a lot of teenage girls in here, which were his really first audience. So the era of hillbilly bars was very short for Elvis Presley, just the summer of 1954. Hey folks, we got a real treat for you. Not everybody gets to go inside Elvis's school, but we will. We're going to go inside, we're going to look at a classroom, and maybe we're going to look at the restroom where Red West saved him from the bullies. So come follow me, we're going to go to Humes High. Alright, we're off to the school now. A rainy day in Memphis. That ought to be a song title. Typical Memphis weather. It was sunny. Now we've got this rain. But it won't slow us down. We'll get there. Off to Humes High we go. From the Eagle's Nest, we have now come to Elvis's school, Humes High School. Though in fact, it was actually two schools in one. It was a junior high and a senior high. Elvis arrived in Memphis in his 8th grade year, thus he attended Humes Junior High with George Klein, who we just spoke to not long ago. And then he continued through the high school years, grades 9, 10, 11, and 12. Elvis and George graduated in 1953, and today the school has created a nice display of artifacts, a little memorial to Elvis Presley. And one of the most interesting pieces is here. It's the graduation program. George, as class president, made a speech, really a couple of presentations that day, and Elvis is listed among the graduates. George also talked about the senior talent show and how Elvis kind of showed his talent to the class and got the loudest ovation, and George knew that, hey, you know, something's going on here. He might go on to bigger and better things. But really, before the talent show, not everybody at Humes realized that. One of the artifacts is the program for that talent show, and they actually have Elvis's name misspelled. Believe me, later on in life, they never misspelled Elvis's name. Well, in this display case, what we have is a copy of Elvis's diploma from the Memphis City Schools and L.C. Humes High School. Mr. T.C. Brindley signed that. Mr. Brindley was the principal of the school. And a few years later, as Elvis was becoming famous, Mr. Brindley was interviewed often. He always spoke quite highly of Elvis. Next to that is a class picture given to the school by one of Elvis's friends. And in the very back is Elvis. He never sat in front of class, he sat in the back. And as we look around, we see a chalkboard, which is similar to what would have been in every classroom in those days. A bookcase, photographs. It's really a nice room. They did a good job with this room. Now, Elvis in high school wasn't just like any other boy, not at all. George told us how Elvis looked. He looked very different, and it was a deliberate attempt to be different. He wanted to dress different. He wanted his hair to be different from the other boys in the school. The odd thing is Elvis was not a rebel, and I think George referenced that as well. He didn't cause the teachers any problem. He was always, yes ma'am, no sir. He was not a disruptive force in the school. And so they, the teachers and the principal, allowed Elvis to dress differently. If he had been arrogant or been a head case, they would most likely have told him to go home and change his clothes. On the other hand, the students really did not care for Elvis's appearance, and there are many stories of how the other students treated Elvis, which really wasn't that kind. Fact is, Elvis was not the most popular boy in school at all. He had a few friends, but not many. What usually happened, though, is someone would tease him about his long hair or his weird clothes. And in one instance, 3 of the tough football players cornered Elvis in the boys' bathroom. And only when another football player, Red West, appeared did Elvis have a chance of getting out there without having his hair pulled out and beaten up. This unfortunately happened a lot in school. Elvis was picked on quite a bit for his appearance. And this may sound unbelievable today, but Elvis was first in his family to actually finish high school. And this was very important to Elvis's parents, that Elvis did finish school. Because the family was poor, Elvis took many jobs, part-time jobs, to help supplement the family income. And one of those jobs in particular required him to work late into the evening. So Elvis would attend class the next day, and he wasn't paying attention. He was sleeping in class. Eventually, when the teachers notified the parents, and Gladys in particular stepped in and made Elvis quit that job. It was really, really important to Gladys and Vernon that Elvis finish school, which is something they didn't have the opportunity to do. Most of the times, Elvis walked to school. He didn't live far away, really just a mile. This school is located in what we typically call North Memphis, but we're very close to downtown Memphis. And the Presley family lived downtown in what used to be called Lauderdale Courts, and that is going to be our next stop. In fact, we're going to go inside and see where the Presley family lived in the very apartment itself. So we're now inside Elvis's apartment in what used to be known as Lauderdale Courts. This is actually the Presley family apartment. Elvis was a minor child. He was in high school, Humes High, which is just a mile away from here. And in this apartment lived Vernon and Gladys, his parents, and occasionally his grandmother, Minnie Mae, though not very often. This apartment has been recreated, I would say, almost exactly the way it was when the Presley family lived here, even to the point of installing in period furniture and furnishings. As we look around, you'll notice the apartment is very small, at least by American standards. And it was small, less than 800 square feet. These apartments were built for the poor, thus you wouldn't expect luxury size and furnishings. But to the Presleys, this was a very nice apartment. They had their own bathroom, had a very nice kitchen, had 2 bedrooms, and they had this nice little sitting room, living room that we're standing in now. The kitchen, in fact, has been furnished with stove and sink that was salvaged from other apartments in this housing project. Follow me, let's go into Elvis's bedroom. And as you can see, it's furnished with typical furniture of 1950s, early 1950s. Behind me is a guitar. And a lot of the stories that we're told of Elvis here at Lauderdale Courts involve him and his guitar. He practiced here, he practiced outside on the front steps, he practiced in the basement, practiced everywhere. It seems that everyone remembers Elvis carrying around that guitar. Of course, this is before he had a career, but obviously he had an interest in music. Otherwise, though, Elvis was just a typical teenage boy in the neighborhood. As you can see some of the toys he would have had. He played football in the nearby parks. You know, he was just an average guy in many ways. One of the favorite pastimes of teenage boys back in the day was playing cowboy and Indians, and Elvis certainly did. He loved to carry strap a 6-shooter on his belt and pretend to shoot. Used to practice firing his toy gun. Presleys lived here at Lauderdale Courts from October 1949 to, no one's quite sure when, but about January 1953. And their world was very small then. Elvis went to school, of course, at Humes, which is about a mile away. He worked various part-time jobs in the downtown North Memphis area. His father, Vernon, worked at the paint factory, which is a walk 5 blocks away from Lauderdale Courts. And his mother sometimes worked even closer. Old St. Joseph Hospital is 2 blocks away from Lauderdale Courts. So everything they did was in this part of downtown Memphis and North Memphis. Today, Lauderdale Courts is really called Uptown Square. And the managers rent out most of these apartments to more of a middle-class clientele, except for the Elvis apartment. It is set aside for special purposes. You can actually rent it as a hotel suite. And a lot of fans have either spent the night here or toured this apartment. Certain number of those fans, the female fans, have expressed their admiration for Elvis, as you can see in this room. The Lauderdale Courts was for the poor, and the Presleys certainly were poor. You had to have a job to obtain an apartment here, which Vernon certainly did, and you had to make a certain amount of money to remain in the courts. But the goal in housing projects in those days was not to keep you here forever. If you made more than a certain amount of money, you were expected to move. In fact, not expected, you were forced to move. And this is what happened to the Presleys in 1953. Vernon made a little bit more money than the minimum, the boundary, so to speak, and he was given the order, time to move out, find another place to live. And so they did. But they liked the neighborhood, and they stayed in apartments near Lauderdale Courts and near the high school. Obviously, Elvis's fascination with music and his practice here led to bigger and better things. We're going to take you next to a studio where later in time he recorded some of his best music, and that studio is American Sound. We're here in North Memphis, in between Lauderdale Courts and Humes High School. This is a former location of American Sound Studio. As you can see, it's a very poor neighborhood, very rough area. Unfortunately, it doesn't look good today. But back in 1969, this was a very hot recording studio. This is where Elvis recorded some of his best work, and we're all familiar with a lot of these songs. He recorded Kentucky Rain here, Suspicious Minds, he recorded In the Ghetto, and it's really ironic he recorded that song In the Ghetto here in the ghetto. From this rundown location, we're going to go back downtown to 706 Union Avenue. Some of you may already know the address. This is Sun Studio, the most famous studio in Memphis where rock and roll began, where Elvis started his career. And we're going to go talk to one of those musicians who was there when rock and roll began. His name is Jimmy Van Eaton. So come on, follow me.
It was on a Saturday night, I remember it well. Elvis was playing at the Chisco Hotel. The band was so hot, someone gave me a chill. Mississippi River tried to stand still. It was playing a song called That's Alright. Mama in Memphis on Saturday night.
Well, Jimmy, thanks for coming in today. We're inside a very famous room. Kind of tell me a little bit about this place here.
Well, this is the ground zero for rock and roll. This is 706 Union, Memphis, Tennessee, Sun Studio, where I actually got my start in the music business, thanks to Sam Phillips and Billy Lee Riley and Jerry Lee Lewis and guys like that. I first started when I really was still in high school, and I came in with a band sort of like Elvis would do. You know, you could pay at the time. You could give them like maybe $15 and cut 2 acetate sides, and we did that. And luckily for me, Jack Clement had just been hired here, and so Jack heard my playing and said, "Man, how would you like to play on some of these records we're cutting down here?" I said, "Are you kidding me? How would I like it?" So that was probably in 1956, maybe early part of 1956 or summer of '56.
So you're a very lucky teenager. You kind of walked right in the beginning of it all.
I did, and timing was perfect. Timing's everything.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
So who did you play with?
Well, I started out the first record that I ever played on that was released was a Jerry Lee Lewis record called Crazy Arms, and End of the Road. And then I was also, but the first one to hire me that had a contract was Billy Riley. He was Billy Riley. He's Billy Lee Riley now, but he's Billy Riley then. And he had just cut Trouble Bound and Rock With Me Baby, which is, Rock With Me Baby actually showed up in this Johnny Cash movie, Walk the Line. So lucky for Billy.
Yeah,
but
good for
anyway,
him, yeah.
He hired me, and but I had been in previously when Sam was here. When I was probably in the maybe 10th, 11th grade, I came in with a guy named Jimmy Williams, who was trying to get a deal with Sun, and he didn't get it then, but eventually he did have a release on Sam loved him, but the boy had a little, couldn't get a record. But finally, after several years, he finally actually had maybe one release, and it was on Sun in its heyday, so he's got that to talk about.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah.
So that's all he ever was able to do.
Yeah, and I got to be. I was the first drummer that recorded with Cash. We did "Ballad of a Teenage Queen," and I don't like it, but his things happen that way. But I guess Jerry Lee's the one that really brought me to the forefront with songs like "Whole Lot of Shakin'" and "Great Balls of Fire" and "Breathless" and "High School Confidential" and
so
on and on and on.
You were on those big songs.
I was on all of Jerry's Sun records except "You Win Again," and I don't know where I was. I don't know where I was at night, but I wasn't on that one.
Yeah. Now, did you actually tour with some of these guys?
Well, I did some. I toured with Orbison some. I got to play with him, and I played with Jerry Lee. We went on the road a few times. I toured with Riley mostly, but we would go and maybe stay 2 or 3 weeks, But I was real lucky because I got a chance to play with different groups, and still do my session gigs too. So I wasn't really locked into one band, although Billy Riley and the Little Green Men was probably the closest thing to being locked into a band. Roland James and Marvin Peppers and Martin Willis and myself.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So it was pretty neat happening in Memphis in the 50s.
Well, I've always heard this was the ground zero of rock and roll. We look around and it's just a little bitty space. Tell me, what's different about recording here than, say, what folks do today?
Well,
what would be different?
I'm going to tell you, there's just hidden magic that's in this studio. You can call it a field, you can call it some kind of spiritual thing, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, God, when He threw out blessings, He definitely dumped a bunch of it right here, because this is a magic studio. Even today, the sound is good. We didn't have separation like they do in studios today. We didn't play as loud as they play in recordings today. But Sam was also a sound man. He knew sound. And this little studio with the ceilings like they are, which is incidentally the lights and the ceilings are the original from the 50s. And so I think that's part of the mistake. And don't forget the slapback echo that he had with the two recording machines.
I've heard about this slapback echo. How did he do that? What was going on there?
He actually had to have two recorders. And he would punch one and then punch the other one, and it would transfer from one end to the other one. I'm not, like I say, I'm not technically on top of all of this, but it worked. I do know that it takes two recorders to do it, because he didn't have an echo chamber like he has at his new studio, Phillips on Madison.
Yeah.
But in here we had no echo chamber as such, so they used that slapback, and man, it was very effective. Covered up a multitude of bad singers, and it added something to all of this. You know, everybody wanted to get that echo sound, and they were buying amps at the time. There was a guy named Roy Butts that would made an amp for Scotty Moore that played echo, and Roy Orbison bought him one. I remember taking Roy to the airport. He actually bought an extra airplane ticket to set his amp in. He didn't want it to go in the storage compartment of the airplane, so he actually bought a ticket to put that new amp in. And if you're a connoisseur of Sun Records, you can actually listen and tell when Scotty's guitar went from just a monaural to that echo amp. I can pick out the songs when he went over.
So this is pre-stereo for those folks who didn't grow up in that area,
Right.
pre-stereo days.
Another thing that happened about the time I got here was, like I was saying earlier, he hired Jack Clement, and shortly after that he hired Bill Justice, and actually got to play with Bill Justice on a major hit record called Raunchy, which was an instrumental.
Oh yeah.
I played on that too. So,
yeah. Oh,
so that was a pretty cool thing. Justice was one of these hip cat dudes. He always talked that hip cat talk, you know. Everybody was dude and bad and amen and all that kind of stuff.
Crazy man, crazy, that kind of stuff.
Where Jack, he's more of a little country boy. But the thing about Jack and the difference between Jack and Sam is I've always felt Sam was a great sound man. He could tell you when it was broke, but he couldn't necessarily tell you how to fix it. But Jack could say, hey, we need to do this in a different key, or you need to hit, do this chord or that chord or something like that. So the two of them together made a pretty good combination. They cut a lot of good records here.
Yeah, they did. We should talk a little bit more about Sam Phillips, because this is his studio.
It's his baby, absolutely.
He created it.
Absolutely. And I wished, I didn't actually know Sam when he actually built the studio, but I could always tell how proud he was of it, because he's mentioned many times about he actually put this ceiling in, which is not a smooth ceiling, as you can see. It's kind of a, what would you call that?
Well, it's almost looks like ocean waves upside down. We're upside down ocean waves.
But he got that sound, and it's a dead sound, even with this floor not having carpet on it. It's still, you still have that deadness that you need for recording, or at least I felt like we needed. And the same way with drums. And my drumming, people want to know, how did you get that sound? Well, I've always laid something on top of the snare, and we only used like a basic, maybe a cymbal and a snare drum and a bass drum and a hi-hat. That's all the drums we had. We didn't have tom-toms. I was lucky enough to get maybe two cymbals. They only had, first off, let me tell you, they only had on this control board, like 5 mics. Now they've got 5 mics just on the drum set.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
But they had like a vocal mic and one for the bass, but the drummer got 2 of them, so I felt pretty special. And if maybe catch a picture of that, I have one over here that'll kind of show you what the recording setup looked like. But I had that down because we didn't want the stuff to bleed from one mic into another one. So I would deaden my snare, and lo and behold, man, the people, especially in England, they loved that sound, man, and they kept trying to figure out how did you get that sound. But that really, I'd lay my billfold on top of the snare, and in one of these pictures over here, I think I have a 45 record laying on top of it.
It was that simple?
It was kind
of like,
but it gives you that little wood chopping thud sound. But we did it out of necessity, but it really became quite popular, and a lot of drummers tried to copy that.
Did Sam have any other little homemade tricks he used?
He would always come out, and his biggest thing is don't get too close to the mic. Don't get too close to the mic. You know, he'd always back up, Elvis, back up, Jerry. You know, don't get too close.
Yeah.
But he, I think, with this slapback echo and the room design that you have, and not bringing in a lot of players, keep it simple.
Yeah.
You know, like Scotty and Bill, a trio. I always laugh about this. This is kind of funny. With Sam, he started out with Elvis with just 3 guys, and then when Jerry Lee comes along with the piano, he adds a piano to every session.
Yeah.
So he didn't have a piano up to then on a lot of the sessions. Then when Bill Justice has a hit with the saxophone, then we had to have the horn on every session. So we kind of progressed on up where the band went from a trio to 7 or 8 players, background singers and all that. But he, you know, like I say, he was a sound genius, man, and a very, very creative person. I love Sam. He was always nice to me, and he was ahead of the times, that's for sure.
Now, Jimmy, as I understand, you didn't really perform with Elvis, or at least in the recording studio here, but you knew Elvis.
I knew him well. Met him several times, and I guess the first time I ever met him, Red West was trying to put a band together, and we were
Red West was,
Red West, and we were rehearsing, going to have a rehearsal out here at a golf course clubhouse at Riverside Drive, or Riverside Park golf course. And we're out there playing. Here comes Elvis, you know. He's got this lavender pants and lavender shirt and all that kind of stuff. And I was pretty blown away with him, you know. Like, golly, what's up with this guy? But then he would come in the studio, you know, and man, when he would walk in the door, it would be like chaos. I mean, well, not chaos. That's not the word I'm looking for. It'd just be like a charisma thing. It'd just stop everything. You know, everybody just, and there was something very special about him. As a matter of fact, he said, I didn't even know he could play piano. He showed me a couple of licks on the piano one night and invited me to come to his house. As a matter of fact, the house on Audubon Drive.
Yeah.
And we were there one night with his mother and dad and probably 7 or 8 of us, you know, close friends of his. And man, he played. I think now that I look back on this, this is probably one of my greatest musical experiences because I don't know, it just, he played like 2 or 3 hours, you know, one song. And I didn't even know he could play that much piano, just him. And, but I didn't think much about it at the time other than I was having a good time. But when you look back on it now, it's just really, that's very, very special. And I'm glad I got to go. Then we went to Graceland a few times, and we used to eat watermelon out there where they got them all buried now. That was a big garden spot, and we'd go skating at Rainbow Skating Rink.
Okay.
And then when we would leave skating rink, we'd go out to Graceland and kind of hang out there, go swimming and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But I would think, and I've seen Elvis's concerts several times, and the first time I actually saw him live was at actually the Chiska Hotel. He was in the ground floor down there, and you could just get up right close to him. I mean, I was standing right next to him. He was putting on his show, and there was like 300 or 400 people packed in that one room, you know. And so that was a great experience. And I saw him at the old Ellis Auditorium a couple of times.
Yeah.
And so I've, and of course, Mid-South Coliseum. I've seen several of his shows, but it's still that one-on-one, you know, that the Elvis that I knew when he was coming down to Sun. That's the Elvis I'm going to remember. You know, he was always nice to me and super times.
Super times.
Yeah.
So he walked in the room and everybody stopped what they're doing.
Oh, absolutely. It's like the $1 Million Quartet. Carl Perkins was cutting a session when they did this $1 Million Quartet. Elvis comes in, and all of a sudden they quit. They quit recording Carl and start singing gospel things. Then they called Jerry Lee was actually at the studio because he was playing piano. They were cutting Matchbox, and Jerry Lee was a session piano player right there at that time. He actually played on Flying Saucer Rock and Roll, a Billy Riley record, and Matchbox, and maybe another one. But he was here that day for that. When Elvis popped in, they called Cash and formed the $1 Million Quartet.
Yeah, which was
and that was just one of those leisure things that just all of a sudden the guy pops in and, you know.
it's a little impromptu
Yeah, and
jam
it
session.
turns
yeah.
out to be another one of those special moments.
Yeah. And I guess, and of course, Sam kept the tape running.
Sam always kept the tape running, and anybody that buys any of these box sets from Sun, you know they've got everything, man. They've got firsthand information, sessions, talking, everything. They never. I don't know when he started doing that, but he had boxes and boxes and boxes of recordings.
Oh my!
That's why when Shelby Singleton released all this stuff on his box sets, you got so many outtakes and so many different songs, because at the time they weren't supposed to be a session. They were just going to be, we were just maybe warming up, and do a Chuck Berry song or a Little Richard song, and it turned into being a Jerry Lee Lewis box set,
Yeah.
later on, but. At the time, you didn't know that, but they recorded just about everything, and I'm glad they did now because history has proven that people like that stuff.
Well, it's part of history. It's part of the beginning of rock and roll.
Right.
Yeah. Sometimes I heard Elvis like to play. He wasn't just a quiet little fellow there, was he?
Well,
not really.
He would rent the fairgrounds and he would rent the movie theaters. But one of his favorites was renting the Rainbow Skating Rink. Now you would think if you're going to rent the skating rink, you're just going to have a little skating party, but this thing turned into more like roller derby. I mean, him and Red, and of course he'd always get Red on his side, but they would pick sides, and it's almost like football on skates, man. I mean, I actually have a scar on my knee right now from going going out there, and I actually got to knock him down one time, so I kind of retaliated. But he liked that. And I asked him, I said, man, does Colonel Parker know you're doing this kind of stuff? He said, we won't tell him, But later on, he started wearing a helmet when they would play touch football and that kind of stuff. But actually, in those days, they would just put the skates on and get out and, just run into each other and see if they could knock you down, man.
Oh, my God.
So it wasn't like we were just skating around the rink. We were really going after it. So that was, and of course, the old donut thing is a true thing, too. There was a donut shop a couple of blocks from the skating rink.
Oh, really?
Lamar.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah, I think it was Thornton's Donuts, but he would bring in these, dozens and dozens of donuts. It was his big thing. So they were hot right out of the grease, I guess.
Oh.
But man, he was big on donuts, and I guess that's where all that jelly donut stuff started.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah,
he liked all that,
Yeah. Oh goodness.
But those are some fond Elvis memories for me, man. And I'll tell you another incident that was, and this actually is talking about Scotty Moore and Bill. They were at the Ellis Auditorium at the time, and we had a north and south hall, so they could actually play to two audiences at once, The stage was in the middle.
Yeah.
And he had sold so many tickets that they opened it up. You could get both sides. So, man, and the girls were screaming so loud, you couldn't even hear the band play. I don't see, man, you guys don't even have to tune up, man. Just go out there and make like you're playing because you can't hear a word you're saying, man. It's just screaming and carrying on. So it was a magical, there was something about all of that I guess you almost have to be there to hear it. But I tell you, I went to this last Elvis thing, this past Elvis week here.
Right, in
and
August.
They had that show at the FedEx Forum.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've ever seen one of those or not, but they have that screen. And, and nowadays, you see that in a lot of places where they have the screen. Grand Ole Opry has one. And all.
Oh, yeah.
And you find yourself looking at Elvis, and they've got that band down there playing. Man, I thought that was outstanding. I was thoroughly entertained.
Well, sometimes you almost half think, God, he's still out there doing it.
Yeah. The only thing about it, the band gets older, and he's still, he's 30 years younger than they are.
Yeah, that's true. Yes, he is 30 years younger than they are.
Yeah, they throw him up there, but it was, I tell you, it's still very entertaining, and he sold enough tickets. Here's a dead man that sold out the Pyramid and the FedEx Forum, and Coliseum
Oh yeah.
and not even here.
Yeah.
That
He's
should
not
tell you
even
something.
here. No, I know.
I mean, you know, we're talking 18, 20,000 tickets.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Isn't that something?
Yeah, it is.
You could go to this Kay's Drive-In was another place Elvis liked to hang out.
Oh, really?
And
Yeah.
we could go in there and when like here again, when I think back on those days, at the time you don't think anything about it because you just got, you know, 2 or 3 guys sitting in the car talking, man. But one of them happened to be Elvis Presley, you know.
Right.
And when you look back on it now and feel just really how intimate that particular setting was, you know, to be with a guy that went on to be as phenomenal as he is. And the sad part about all of the Elvis things for me, I guess, was the fact that he got to the point where you couldn't get to him, the one-on-one like we had at the beginning, you know.
Yeah.
His entourage and his management, and you just never saw him except at a glimpse. You never could get down and talk to Elvis like you could years ago, you know. That breaks my heart. And then to see what happened to him physically and on stage, but he still had good shows, but it really wasn't quite the same. I think, you know, after his mother passed away, that hit him real hard.
Yeah.
And but I like to remember the Elvis that came into the studio and the ones that I knew before the Army days and before his mother passed away, and those times that we spent, you know.
Yeah. That's
Because,
what.
he would bring some of these Hollywood starlets in here, and I mean, it was just you just never knew. You know, you'd be down here, because I played on so many sessions that he would be in and out on a pretty regular basis, you know, and you never knew who he'd have with him. He always seemed to bring somebody, you know.
Do you remember Natalie Wood? You remember?
Well, I
bringing
remember a couple of them. I don't remember her particularly, but I do remember him bringing a couple of good-looking girls in here. That I do remember. And a couple of them were from Hollywood, so it could have very well been her, but I don't remember if it was her or not. But they would ride the motorcycles in and, you know, have the girl on the back of the motorcycles. And Memphis was it was a great place to be. It still is, but it was really great then.
Yeah. Did you ride motorcycles with Elvis?
I didn't ride motorcycles with him, but we did start riding a few motorcycles. I don't know if you know. Jack had one, and we ride them for a while. But I wasn't as big into it as he was. I wasn't actually part of the Elvis entourage. The only regrets I ever have is not asking him for a job. You know, I feel like, I mean, I love DJ and he's a great drummer, but I always thought, man, I might could have got the job if I'd have been a little more aggressive. But he already had a drummer and they were out playing and all that. But we were just friends, you know, and I think he appreciated the music that I was playing and the guys that I was playing. I know he loved Roy Orbison and he loved Cash and Carl Perkins and those guys, you know.
Yeah.
So it was kind of we were like a big family here. They would go out in the early days and do these shows, you know, with, well, actually it was a Sun show.
Yeah.
Until Elvis got so big that he wasn't part of the show. But it was like Warren Smith and Sonny Burgess and Billy Riley and Roy Orbison and the list goes on and on. I'm sure I'm forgetting somebody. But then when Elvis dropped out, it was Jerry Lee and Johnny Cash were headlining and Carl. Because they all had monstrous records too, you know.
Yeah, they did.
But it was fun traveling. We would travel mostly, for me, was kind of in a radius where you didn't have to stay out weeks at a time. We'd stay out, you know, just a few days at a time and then come back and do our recording and then maybe go out with somebody else.
Yeah. Well, you were still in school, weren't you? Or?
Well, I was just getting out of school, and actually I wound up going to Canada with Conway Twitty, of all people, man. That was kind of strange, but how I went up in that band. But I did that. Riley, somehow we didn't have anything booked, and it was slow down here, so I actually went and toured with him some.
Oh my goodness!
So that was I've had some pretty neat experiences.
I bet you have. Yeah.
By the time I got here, in my whole career, Elvis was already leaving to go to RCA, but he was still a major force here because he kept coming back, and you know, he didn't want to leave either, really. They asked him once, one guy asked him, so what do you like most about Memphis? He said everything. And I'm sure he loved the barbecue and the girls and the music and the whole 9 yards, man. I don't know of anything he didn't like, you know.
Yeah.
Elvis was a very compatible person, you know. He loved Beale Street. He loved blacks, whites, you know, he loved all kind of music. He loved it all, man. He was a chameleon as far as mixing in and doing it, which his music proved that, you know. I mean, that's the kind of stuff he wanted to sing. But he could do country. He could do anything.
Yeah.
And so he was, but he was a people person. He was a type of guy where girls loved him and the guys loved him. I mean, he wasn't just, you know, it was. I think guys had cared as much about his music and for him as the girls did. You know, and that's kind of unusual. Usually, guys don't care nothing about the band so much, you know, as the girls. But he had it going on with both of them.
Yeah.
But he and coming from North Memphis, which was Humes High School, and I was raised in North Memphis myself. That was kind of a little different environment in Memphis. Now, I mean, you grew up. If you were out of North Memphis, you were a pretty tough guy.
Yeah, that
really.
was cool.
I mean, that was kind of a survival. It may be like Chicago or New York. I don't know, but I can tell you one thing: Memphis, you had to fight to survive in Memphis in the '50s, regardless.
Yeah.
And Elvis, you know, he tried to hang in there, you know, in that environment too, because he was raised there in over here at Lauderdale Courts, and so growing up that way, you grow up tough, you know.
Yeah.
I don't think he was wimpy by any stretch.
No,
that's what made him a man's man too, you know.
He was, yeah, that was a poor part of town, you know. He had to fight for what you wanted, I guess. Yeah.
When you go to school with the Bramletts and Red Weston and you know, all those guys.
Yeah, they were tough guys.
You got to be, you know, you got to be able to.
Yeah.
But he was smart enough to make friends with those guys, you know.
Well, he knew how to charm them, yeah.
Right.
He knew how to charm his way out of trouble,
Right.
too, yeah.
But, and even George Klein, man, I mean, no, I don't think anybody expected Elvis to be what he was. You know, George was a disc jockey in Osceola at the time when That's All Right Mama came out. And when they carried him around, he couldn't believe it. He said, man, here's Elvis Presley. Is that the same guy that went to school with me? You know, and it's like, yeah, man, that's the same guy. And you know what's really strange about Elvis is that he never played locally. Elvis didn't have a band and start out playing in a club like I did or parties or such. He started out right here with the record. You know, he walked in and cut a record. That was a hit.
Yeah.
And then he got his band and went on the road.
That is unusual. Cause
I mean, he tried to get a job with Eddie Bond and some of them other people, and they didn't want him. Man, no, and Blackwood Brothers, they didn't want him.
Yeah.
You know, but when he came in and got that hit record, man, very few people don't do that. You know, I mean, you don't just walk in. Usually, you played somewhere
Right.
before you have a record deal.
Kind of like an apprenticeship. You learn the business
right,
and you get
but
out there and do
He got the record deal
shows.
before
He jumped right in and got the
he
got the
learned the
record.
business owner. He got that OJT, man, on the job training. You know.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now, you know, I don't know if people think about that, but
Well, he must have known a lot of songs when he walked in the door. I mean, he just didn't walk in ignorant.
no, I'm sure he did. And he also grew up with the Johnny and Dorsey Burnett boys, which are pretty tough. They were all fought in the Golden Gloves, and
Oh yeah.
so they were all kind of hanging out together, you know.
Yeah.
Plus, you hear them telling, and Charlie Feathers, you know, he's another one, man. And all those influences, it could have been any of those guys could have probably. I mean, they all came out of the same environment, right there in the projects, you know.
Yeah.
But Elvis, man, I don't know. He's the one that cut straight through to the top, man.
Yeah.
And the others were relatively successful. Obviously, Johnny and Dorsey Burnett, you know, went on to be real popular. And then
Yeah.
Charlie Feathers is a rockabilly icon. You know, he was around here forever.
Yeah.
So there was a lot happening in the early '50s and mid '50s.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Jimmy, one last question. What do you miss about Elvis the most? What one thing, if you can think of it?
Well, you know, I think what I miss is the times when you could just come in before he got so popular. You know, and you could just come in and play some really good music. You know, you can't do that anymore. Even the people that are relatively famous still have such an entourage today that you can't really sit down and have that to me, that closeness. And I miss that, and especially because being from the South and being born, I'm from Memphis myself, you know, and having that same Southern background, and I miss that. And today's entertainers, I don't know, man. They're just, it's not quite the same. I can't quite put my finger on it, but you don't find very many of them that have that charisma or that sincerity about him. Elvis was sincere about his music, you know.
Yeah.
And he could get it, man. Today they got so many gadgets, man. They got, you know, they can if you're singing flat, they can raise you up and get you on key. They can do so many things that you don't know when you hear the finished product if it's real or not real. You know, it's synthesizers and all this stuff. But with Elvis, man, it was back in there was simplicity, I guess, of the music, and just having that feeling of it seemed like everybody was happy, you know.
Yeah.
Happy days, man.
Yeah.
That'd be a good title for a
TV show? Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I remember that one.
You know, Elvis to me was the true Southern gentleman, and he was a super nice guy.
Jimmy, thank you. Appreciate
Yeah,
all the
my
kind
pleasure.
words
Thank you. Thank
said
you.
to me. Thank you.
Yeah.
You're a Southern gentleman. Thanks a lot, sir. So we're going to leave Sun Studio, the creation of the music, and go downtown to see Bernard Lansky, and see the creation of the style, the clothing, the kind of the attitude of Elvis Presley.
Started playing the music on the radio, the ones that were cut in some studio. Now we didn't know there was history in the making. Women started doing a whole lot of shaking. They're dancing on TV, dancing in the street, man, they couldn't get enough of that Memphis beat.
Here we are in downtown Memphis, world famous Peabody Hotel. Right next to the Lansky shops. We're going to go inside and talk to the man himself. Bernard, I want to thank you for talking to us.
My pleasure.
Tell us a little bit about your favorite customer, Elvis.
Elvis, dynamite young man, very nice, real sharp, dynamite. Good Lord took care of good folks, and he is one of our good folks, Elvis, the man with the plan.
Now, where did you meet Elvis? I see some pictures behind me.
Yeah, That was 1956 when Elvis first started out.
Yeah. Where was that?
That was down on Beale
Beale
Street.
Yeah. You had a store there.
Yeah,
For how long?
1935 to 1946.
Yeah? Yeah. What kind of clothes did Elvis like to buy? What kind of stuff
High
did he like?
fashion, real high fashion. He wanted something that nobody else had, and different things. And we made everything for him special. I mean, anything he wanted, we got it. We made it for him. It was different. We started him out first with his pink and black. Everything that he would buy that we would put together would be pink and black, and that went over big. Fantastic. When he graduated from Humes High School, he didn't have no tuxedo or nothing for graduation. So we fixed him up with everything with pink and black tuxedo, pink and black necktie, pink and black cummerbund. Man, he was sharp. Took pictures of him, fantastic. Everybody, ooh, nah, man, that's Elvis. He's really sharp. What can you say? You got him right. That's the first one we put on him, and made it fantastic from then on.
Now, I understand you you sold him the clothes that he wore on the big TV shows.
Oh,
like
yeah,
that Sullivan Show.
everything he did on television, we had everything ready for him and things like that. We used to go out, and whenever it's come in there, he's getting bigger and bigger. Everything was fantastic. In 1956, he used to work at the theater downtown, Lowe's Theater. He used to come out the back door and come down the alley, come down to Beale Street, and look in our windows. And after he leave our windows, he went down to the church, to the black church down on Beale Street. He liked that music,
gospel music, yeah.
He used to come by every day, go down there and sit back in the back. He said, way back in the church, listening to singing the gospel song. And he took on to that. It was fantastic. Then he went over to the Ellis Auditorium, and they had what do you what's
Blackwood Brothers.
the Blackwood Brothers.
Yeah,
He
Blackwood Brothers.
He used to come in and sing in with them. He pick, after he learned all that stuff over there, he put all that stuff together, and then he put a lot of stuff he put on his own thing.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, he learned right here in Memphis all
That's
this music.
exactly right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sam Phillips did a lot of Elvis's recording.
Yeah, yeah. So he got his start right here in Memphis.
Exactly right.
Yeah, yeah.
But he went out on a gig. When he had his first big one from Lowe's Theater, he went to New York. The first thing he said, Mr. Lansky, I got a contract going to New York. I'm going to be on the Ed Sullivan show. I said, oh, that'd be fantastic. He said, I'm going up there. I'm leaving this Saturday. I got to have some clothes. I said, okay. So I showed him everything I had, and I had everything on the counter, all piled up there. And I explained to him. I said, nah, this is what he called. He said, I've got a problem. I said, what's your problem? He said, I don't have no money. I said, you sure right about that? You sure ain't got no money on this stuff. I said, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to take care of you. Anything you want, I'm betting on you. You got Ed Sullivan, Tommy Dawson, Jimmy Dawson, and the rest of them going to be in New York with you. It'll be fine. It'll be terrific. It'll be unreal. Okay, fantastic. From then on, then we clicked just like that.
Yeah, he had some money later on, though, didn't he?
Not at first he did.
Not at first.
No, at first. On 30 days, he paid my money and everything. I told him, anything you want, if you see something you want, I'm not here, just holler in behind the counter and let them charge it. You pay 30 days, you got a carte blanche. Anything you want, you get.
Yeah.
And he went for it, and he paid. He knew he had their clothes. He didn't have no clothes, so I took care of all that for him.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Now, so after he became famous, he kept shopping with you.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Kept buying from you.
It wasn't nothing. He'll call you 2 o'clock in the morning. What's the last? Yeah, but what you want? Man, I will come downtown and see what you got there. I've been busy all day. I said, okay, 2 o'clock in the morning, I'll meet him. He's down the store. About 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning, he's gone. I'm back in this, waiting on my customers, waiting on some new customers. Guy's dynamite, fantastic. Never believe, man, when he shake them legs, I saw him on television. This kid got to make it. I mean, this man is unreal. He's sharp, different, nobody else could knock off like he knew what he wanted.
Yeah, yeah. Now, there's a rumor has it that you traded with Elvis. He had this fancy Messerschmitt motorcycle.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you
German
traded it. Yeah.
No, in fact, he came with the radio station in New York gave it, sent it down in Memphis for Elvis. And Elvis had this a plate thing for him. He didn't need nothing like that. But anyway, he came down, got out of the car, and said, "Come here, Mr. Lansky, I'll show you something. Come on up, come on, show you something." He said, "Come on, get in." So we went around the block, came back, and when he got out, I got out. I said, "Elvis," I said, "when you get through, that's my car." And he sit back there with a smile. They always have a smile on his face, like nothing's happening. It was just fantastic. So what can you say? Never forgot me. In other words, and later on, he got tired of it. I got tired of it. So what I did, I took that car and I put it in a big box and put it in my garage. I put screws on it. Everybody, can we borrow that car to put on the auction or something like that? I said, hey, don't put auction. I'll let you see it, but I'm not going to take it out. But I still didn't take it out. At least they knew what I had.
Yeah.
I mean, all of it, but it used to be parked out in front of the car, out in front of the store on Bill Street.
Really? So he just gave you this car?
Yeah.
He just gave it to you?
Yeah. He was nice. I did him a favor. He did me a favor. We did each other a favor.
I thought he traded it, like you gave him a buying spree. Oh, that's bullshit. Okay.
No, he didn't have no money, but anytime he needs something, he got it. He didn't have no money, had to have money, but he brought his money, and when he get clean, he started rolling in with all that money.
Yeah, yeah.
Man, fantastic.
Yeah. So you, when you opened up on Beale Street, who were your first customers? Not Elvis, but who were you selling to? Black folks, white folks?
We had all black clientele, all the singers, band leaders, and stuff like that. We played different things. Different group. Wasn't a rock and roll group. It was a different group. What they used to sing all the time.
People like Rufus Thomas.
All the rest of them used to be exactly.
B.B. King.
B.B. King and all of them.
Yeah, all those guys they used to shop from you.
Exactly.
Yeah. You think that's what kind of attracted Elvis? You think that's what he...
definitely, man. He definitely was. Number one, he didn't have no clothes after he started getting his clothes and everything. He started getting around. But he always come to me, Tim, I'm getting ready to go out of town. I need some clothes. I need to fix my clothing wardrobe. I said, okay, be no problem. We'll take care of it. Anytime you need something, just call me and let me know. So we had no problem.
Yeah.
He paid his bill. He got what he wanted. Just like a carte blanche. Anything he wanted, he walked in and got it.
Yeah.
If he didn't have it ready for him, we had to get it. We went on a gig or something, going out of town or something.
Yeah.
Always in a bag and everything, ready to go.
Yeah.
Self-packed.
Now, after he got famous, did he always come to you in the middle of the night, 2 in the morning?
No, they don't care. You know, they're out all night long.
Yeah.
They ride up and down the street. They well, let's call Bernard and see if we can get him up. I said, well, what can I say? Elvis, big man, he might be a bigger man. So what can you do? You play with the
You'd get out of bed and go downtown and go, yeah.
Drive downtown, leave instead of 5 o'clock in the morning. I just really open up and stay in the store, you know. Why not?
Go sleep some other time, right?
You're right about that. That's one of my good clientele.
Yeah, I guess you know, yeah, you wouldn't want to turn down a sale from Elvis Presley. No.
Especially you got to do them favors and things like that.
Yeah, yeah.
But anytime I went to the market, I pick up a lot of stuff from him, which I know he would.
Really?
Would,
Just you
just
knew.
to pick up piece goods and things, silky wool, mohairs and things like that. No back pockets, different bolero coats, pants, flare-laid pants they did. We used to make for him.
Yeah.
Like the sailors used to have.
You mean you used to buy the clothes or you used to make them?
No, we make them.
You made the
We had a
clothes?
tailor shop. We had to make them.
Oh, okay. Oh, so he got custom clothes.
Yeah,
He got custom
everything
stuff.
we made was custom. He
Yeah.
was funky. He didn't want that everything with different things. He wanted something different, and that's when we came in to have something different for him.
So yeah.
And he was appreciated.
So
And he got to
you're
it.
so you're helping him create a style.
Exactly. It was his style, something different.
Yeah. You sound close to black folks. You sound close to white folks.
Mm-hmm.
What's the difference? What did?
It was different.
What's the difference?
It was different what Elvis had and what the blacks had different. But they were sharp. We made the bolero coats, made those pants, no back pocket pants, and tapered, real tapered. Looked good on the pants,
real tight fitting? Tight fitting.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
When they left there with the blacks, they were satisfied. And also with the Elvis group like that, the black with the white, we got all new merchandise. Mohair, silk and wool, high price piece good, and we had 15 tailors in our warehouse, in our tailor shop.
15?
Yeah.
Wow, I didn't know you had that big of a shop.
No, I
Big of
think
a deal.
that's for your time.
It's for my time. I know, I'm a little bitty kid.
We had to work with this man, unreal.
Yeah? Yeah.
But we would get started. He paid for it. Like he had no money, but we start out. We told him what we were gonna do.
Yeah.
Every 30 days, you pay money, you got it.
Yeah.
It'd be no problem.
Now, his styles change as the years go on.
Oh
What
yeah,
kind of
definitely.
stuff did
definitely. You pick out some different things. You know, it had holes in it. You had to fix where you're gonna get, what kind of piece of goods you're gonna get. He's already got this. We're gonna get something different, and make up something different for him.
Yeah.
He always wants something. He always, what we got different. What we got different. Let me see that. Let me see the piece goods. Let me see this. Let me see that. Hey man, here it is right here. Whatever you want, you let me know. I'll get it ready for you. I've got his measurement, got his sizes and everything. Nope, wasn't no problem on that.
Yeah. So he was never just satisfied wearing the same old thing.
No. He had to have different. Every time he turned around, he was sharp. He was clean as Ajax.
Clean as H.
Man, I mean,
He was clean, huh?
He was. He was right about that.
Oh, me. What was it like having him in the store? I mean, was it?
You know, a lot of white kids come up to the store. They would wait and listen when he come in. They all come in the store and everything. You couldn't do nothing because they're always in your way and everything like that. And the black dude knew what he wanted. He knew what he wanted. He knew what he got to get it Friday for the weekend.
Yeah.
But Elvis had his different things. He had different contracts he had to go meet.
Yeah.
Things like that.
Yeah.
Which was good. It wasn't no problem. It didn't hit on us or anything because we knew what to get back to that one had to get on this one.
Yeah.
It was two different things.
Yeah, it is.
And then not only that, all the white boys started coming around. Man, unreal. And they started getting all these bad guitar players and things.
Were they trying to copy Elvis?
No. It was a difference. Elvis had his own.
Okay,
Black
no
and
one
white,
copied
pink
him.
and white and all that
Yeah,
stuff like that.
yeah, no one copied him. Yeah.
No. I wouldn't let it happen because I tell you, he was the man by himself.
Yeah.
Something different. And he explained to me, and I knew what was happening. He wanted to be number one in the thing.
What do white guys want to wear, like country western stuff, or just?
No. White guy.
Yeah, no.
Whatever you see, what he was wearing, the black, all this new stuff that we put up.
Yeah.
High price piece goods.
Yeah.
We got
Okay.
together with.
Okay. Yeah. Oh.
She called me up 11 o'clock and Mr. Lansky, bring your wife and the kids and we're going to the theater, the theater over in Crosstown.
Yeah.
He said, we'll get here at 11 o'clock and get out at 5 o'clock in the morning. I said, I know you kidding. There ain't no way in the hell I'm going to do that. So stay up all night and got to get up next day. And I get up 5 o'clock in the morning to come to work. I said, no, I ain't going to do that.
So today we're in the Peabody Hotel. I guess you call this your news store. You're not on Beale Street no more. And
No.
and as I walk around, I notice a lot of guitars on the wall.
That's
What's
right.
going on with that? What do you?
That's what we put them in the store. Everybody played. We're playing guitars.
Yeah.
And they come in there, so we start start getting guitars, anybody come in, we have a clean guitar. We keep about 30 or 40 of them in a warehouse, and anytime they come in here, we, get a guitar out for them.
So
Once you get them in here, I'll be back in a few minutes. I got to go buy some. We keep them in stock all the time, 20 or 30 of them at a time all the time. When they come in, we sign them, we put them upstairs, and then we start putting them up here.
Yeah.
I want you to take a walk with me. We'll take about a second right in there, show them all them guitars.
Sure. Yeah. Come on in.
Come on, go back here. See all these guitars. That's one of Elvis's coat. I made 8 of them in 1973.
Oh.
Got a mink collar on them.
It looks like Superfly.
That it is. That's exactly. That's the time of the Superfly.
Superfly. Wow.
See all these guitars.
Yeah.
Jimmy Dean, Tanner Tucker, Johnny Cash, T.G. Shepard, Hootie and the Blowshit, Jimmy Dean, Bush, Tom Petty, Carl Perkins.
Johnny Cash.
I got Elvis' guitar. I got it upstairs. The guy would kind of walk away with it, and I pulled it out. I would love to see them.
Yeah, you got to be careful.
I got Lisa Marie.
Lisa Marie.
Yeah, her guitar.
We do a lot of these artists stay in the Peabody? They stay in the hotel?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they stay here and they come in here and shop. Wow.
Got Kiss, Van Morrison, B.B. King.
U2.
Just walk around and pick up on it.
Sure. Looks to me like you run out of space for guitars.
Yeah, you're about right about that.
Greg Allman, Melissa Etheridge.
Van Morrison.
Yeah, hidden by your poster.
U2, Greg Allman.
Yeah.
Got Lisa Marie's.
Three Dog Night.
Melissa Eldridge.
Yeah.
Everclear.
Yeah.
Matchbox 20.
Matchbox 20. Oh, yeah. But all right, I want to thank you for your time. Thanks for showing me around the store.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Appreciate you coming in here.
Sure.
Glad to do this for you.
I'll be back again someday.
Why not? You're always welcome.
Yeah. Right now we're going to leave the store, Lansky's, and we're going to walk around Memphis and see what else we can see. Well, Elvis would take his hip clothing with him and go to the Variety Club. It was another hangout downtown. This is where he pal around with George Klein and Dewey Phillips. We're back in familiar territory down on Main Street, near where the old theaters used to stand. Behind me was once the Gayosa Hotel, and in the basement was the Variety Club. And this was a social organization of theater owners, people in the entertainment business, radio, TV folk, and of course Elvis was really attracted to this kind of world. The Variety Club was also one of the few places in Memphis that served liquor by the drink. See, Memphis had really strange laws regarding alcohol in those days. And restaurants couldn't serve drinks, but the Variety Club could because it was a private organization. And this attracted folks like Dewey Phillips, who did love a drink or two. And after their shows, Dewey would come down here and hang out, and George Klein would come, Elvis would come. This is where Elvis learned to shoot pool. From one place of entertainment to the next, we're going to leave the Variety Club here in downtown Memphis and go to South Memphis to the Rainbow roller skating rink. You know, one reason why Elvis kept going back to Lansky's time and time again is he kept losing clothing. He kept, some clothing was destroyed. And when we get to the roller skating rink, I'm going to tell you why and how that happened. We've just made a little drive from downtown Memphis to South Memphis. This work site behind me was once the location of a Rainbow roller skating rink. Back in the day, this was the edge of town. It's not so anymore. This is a place that Elvis and a lot of his friends like to go for recreation. You know, in a lot of ways, Elvis was like a big kid. He liked to do the same things as the teenagers did. He liked to rent the roller skates, ride around with his friends. And then they did something that maybe a lot of kids didn't do. There was a signal given, and at some point the women would leave the skating floor, sit in the stands, and the guys would split in two sides. And at a signal, they would begin playing a version of roller skating football, or rugby for those of you in the UK. It was pretty rough stuff. People left with bruises and bumps. And on occasion, Elvis would have his clothing torn. A shirt, and on one occasion a pair of pants. And I don't know how they did it. I don't know if he brought extra clothing with him or if someone made the trek to the home, but Elvis always wanted a fresh shirt or a pair of pants to replace the torn one. And he would take that torn piece of clothing, toss it in the trash, and then go on back to the game. Now the lady who owned this place once told me that she would kind of sneak over that trash can, retrieve the torn clothing, and that was her souvenir of the day. Yeah, Elvis wasn't the only one that fell down and maybe hurt himself. Jimmy Van Eaton told us he banged his knee here and still carries a scar. So those were rough days. We're going to leave this place, drive a couple of miles, and go to another famous studio where Elvis did some of his work. That's Stax Studio. We're here in Macklemore Avenue on the side of another famous recording studio in Memphis. This building is the Stax Museum of American Soul Music. It's a recreation of Stax Studio. And indeed, a lot of great music was created here, a lot of soul music. And just like Elvis's music, Stax music is a mix of black and white influences. A lot of great players, both black and white, performed here over the years. And I'm sure that's the attraction to Elvis. In 1973, he recorded at Stax 2 sessions. One didn't go so well, as I understand it. The other went much better. And from those sessions came songs like Promised Land, or Good Time Charlie's Got the Blues, Raised on Rock. A good mixture of country music, soul music, black and white music. Oh, the list of great songs and great artists who recorded here is long. I'll give you a few names: Isaac Hayes, Booker T and the MGs, all their hit songs. Rufus Thomas, Carla Thomas, Sam and Dave, Wilson Pickett. Oh my goodness, the names go on and on and on. Eddie Floyd. The great soul music of the 60s and early 70s all was recorded here. It's great music. If you have time, please step in and have a look at their museum. You know, by the 1970s, Elvis had accumulated quite a bit of money. He had done quite well, shall we say. And our next stops, we're going to show you where he spent that money and what he bought. We're going to leave South Memphis now, go back down Elvis Presley Boulevard to Whitehaven, to what really is the most famous place in Memphis. Come follow me. We just passed the Elvis Presley Boulevard Inn sign, the blue sign, and some of you may recognize it from the concert film that was done in 1972, Elvis on Tour, the second of the 2 concert films. In 1972 was the same year that the city named this road, Old Highway 51, after Elvis Presley Boulevard. Really not a name that he wanted, but rather than upset city officials, he accepted the honor. In Memphis, Elvis Presley Boulevard leads to the fans' ultimate destination. Everyone who, in fact, who comes to Memphis wants to see our next destination, Elvis's beloved home, Graceland. Here we are, folks. Elvis Presley Boulevard. We're at Graceland. Behind me is one of Elvis Presley's most expensive purchases, the Lisa Marie airplane. In the early days, Elvis was afraid to fly, and he would avoid it if all possible. But by the 1970s, when he began his concert tours again, this was the era of the corporate jet, the private jet, and these aircraft were much safer, much faster, and Elvis would overcome that fear of flying. Eventually, he would purchase his own airplanes. The largest is the one you see, the Lisa Marie. Today, Elvis's airplanes, the Lisa Marie and the Hound Dog 2, are part of the Graceland Tour. and thousands and thousands of people that come to Memphis every year. They tour the mansion, they tour the airplanes, the car museum, and other exhibits that are part of that package tour. We're going to leave the airplanes where Elvis spent loads of his money and show you now his real pride and joy, the final stop of our Memphis tour, Graceland Mansion. Here we are across the boulevard from the airplanes is Graceland itself, Elvis's home. You know, he bought this home when he was only 22, back in the year 1957. This would be the last home he lived in Memphis. He died here 20 years later, 1977. He is buried here today with his mother, his father, and his grandmother. This is perhaps the most popular home among all the homes visited in the United States of America today. So I'm leaning on the wall that Elvis built around Graceland in 1957. He needed the privacy. But as soon as the wall was built, fans began writing on the wall, little messages to Elvis, little messages to themselves saying, "I was here." And that tradition continues today, as you can see. That's one of the things fans love to do, is write their messages on Elvis's wall. As rich as Elvis was, he could have lived anywhere in the world, any house he wanted, but he chose to stay here at Graceland in Memphis. Graceland to Elvis was refuge from his career. He always came back here after the big film or big concert tour. He loved Graceland. This is where the entourage would gather. This was a meeting point for all the family and friends before they went out on their night's adventure to the amusement park or the roller skating rink or to the Memphian Theater. And last, this is also where the fans gathered. Elvis employed his own uncles and cousins to man the gates, and the fans would come here. They learned to make friends with Uncle Vester and Cousin Harold. And those guys would say, you know, Elvis is going to the movies tonight. Why don't y'all meet us at the Memphian about midnight? And then some of these fans would get to participate in Elvis's life. Elvis enjoyed all his hobbies here at Graceland. He rode horses a lot on the Graceland lawn. And the entourage would say, you can always tell when Elvis was outside because you could hear the screams from the fans. They would scream every time they saw Elvis. It was a special day for the fans. Elvis was out riding a horse. Elvis would indulge in his kind of boyish pranks here too. On 4th of July, they would go out into the country. They would go out and buy maybe hundreds of dollars worth of fireworks and shoot them off at each other. At each other. Elvis the risk taker. They would shoot really dangerous fireworks at each other. Now, Elvis also raised a family here at Graceland. He was married to Priscilla while living in this house. They had a child, Lisa Marie, and many people remember seeing Lisa Marie as a little girl riding around in one of her go-karts on the driveway. She was a little risk taker like her daddy. Of course, the saddest day in Memphis history was probably August 16, 1977. That's when Elvis Presley died here inside the mansion. There's a lot of controversy over how he died, what caused his death. We don't need to go into that now. Officially, it was a heart attack. Life ended too soon. He was only 42 years old, and it was a shock to everyone involved, to his family, to his friends. Elvis's death was a shock to the world. Hours after his death, thousands of people came into the city, came to this very gate and wall to pay their respects to Elvis. Maybe 100,000 people were here in Memphis for Elvis's funeral. Today, 30 years after that tragic day, thousands of people come to Memphis every year. In fact, they estimate 700,000 people tour the mansion every year. We have come to the end of our tour of Memphis. We've shown you so many places here associated with Elvis. We've shown you where he used to live, where he used to play, where he used to go to school, where he started his career, where he gained his inspiration. Everything I could possibly think of, I tried to show you on our little journey around this city. You know, there's a famous quote. Elvis was once asked, what did he miss about Memphis? And his answer was one word: everything. That says it all. He loved Memphis. He loved everything about Memphis. And if he was alive today, he would still love Memphis today. He would love the blues, the rock and roll on Beale Street. He loved the neon signs, the motorcycles. He'd be up all night long riding those motorcycles if he was here today. Folks, my name is Mike Freeman, and I've enjoyed giving you a tour of my Memphis, Elvis's Memphis. Thanks for coming with me, and so long.
Started playing music on the radio. The ones that cut, some still